Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingracia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast, and thank you for being with me today. We're going to jump right into this episode with Dr. Kathy Maupin. But before we do, I wanted to extend an apology because the audio quality is not quite what I would like it to be. I don't know what the deal is. Sometimes there's a good signal. Sometimes there's a difficult signal on these interviews. And for some reason, when Dr. Kathy would speak, she was cutting in and out a little bit. So I'll edit that the best I can and try to make it as seamless as I can. But I just want to extend that apology. This podcast is for God and for His kingdom, and I think God deserves the very best. And I'm doing my very best, but I'm really not that good with this part of it, so I do my very best. But I do trust that the content is very significant, and I do believe it will be a blessing to you and encourage you. So I pray that this episode will be a blessing. And with that said, let's jump right into our very important interview with Dr. Kathy Maupin. God bless you. Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast, and thank you so much for being with me for this very special episode of the podcast. I'm glad you're here today, and I think you're going to be blessed because I have a very special guest, and I've really been looking forward to this interview with Dr. Kathy Maupin. So before I say anything else, let me just say hi, Dr. Kathy.
Hi, I'm very blessed to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And for the sake of our listeners, maybe a lot of people have heard of you and know who you are and what you do. But let me just read this little statement, this little vignette that I found. It says that Dr. Kathy Maupin is the founder and medical director of BioBalance Health and the most experienced hormone doctor in St. Louis. She practiced obstetrics and gynecology for more than 30 years. In 2003, she created BioBalance Health to help women and men deal with symptoms of aging and menopause through personal care and bioidentical hormone pellet treatments, a natural and preventative therapy that helps to alleviate the effects of aging. In 2009, Dr. Maupin elected to devote 100% of her time to BioBalance Health and has never looked back.
It's true. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful calling to be taking care of people as they get a little bit older and feel like they've lost their power and their strength.
So, Dr. Kathy, can I ask you, it's very intriguing here in this little vignette. It says that you, for 30 years, you were in obstetrics and gynecology, and after you discovered BioBalance Health and kind of this hormone replacement, it like radically changed not just your personal life, but your professional life. And you actually redirected yourself professionally, your career, to go 100% into BioBalance Health. So how and why were you affected so profoundly by that?
This was definitely I had always taken care of women in general. I'd taken care of them in terms of delivering their babies and helping them through surgery and seeing them every day for yearly visits and preventive care. But when I had my own hysterectomy, and it was an enlightenment that I was given this message that there are a lot of women when they go through a hysterectomy and have their ovaries out, that when their hormones are gone, sometimes a piece of them leaves. And that changes everything, their viewpoint, their marriages, their friendships, how they feel about themselves. And it takes away a lot of their energy and their life force. So I felt like I was given a difficult road to walk until I finally begged God to help me, because everything I knew and everything I tried didn't work. And I had always been really good at hormones. I thought this was going to be a breeze. So I had already taken care of women for years with hormones. But for me, when my hormones were taken away, it was more severe than I'd seen it or perceived it or understood what women went through. And so I took the practice of medicine, or I had to find an answer. And within 2 days of taking my hands off the wheel and letting God do it, then I found a way back. I was introduced to a man who was a doctor in California who had family here. His name was Gino Tatera. And I was introduced through a friend who just saw me and said, "What is wrong with you?" And I told her, and she said, "My brother's coming into town and he takes care of this all the time. This is something he can fix. He can help you." So I saw Gino 2 days later. He talked to me. We discussed things. He actually treated me, and I was almost better overnight. I was better so quickly and so completely that it was a miracle to me. And I knew God had sent him, not as a person, but as a vehicle to give me this new knowledge of something that we didn't have in St. Louis or the Midwest. I tried everyone. So that's why I tried to keep my practice intact and continue doing OBGYN. But this was so important and so powerful that I finally stopped the practice of medicine, of that type of medicine, OBGYN. There's many people who can do that well. And I started this practice and I was the first one in St. Louis to start this.
Wow, that's quite an amazing story. So I understand from your website that at the age of 47, you had a hysterectomy and you were profoundly affected by that experience. It radically affected your body and your hormones. And how would you put words to that? How were you affected by that?
I honestly felt like I had someone remove the person that I was and put somebody else back in. And I still believed the things I'd always believed. I still wanted to work hard. I still wanted to. I was always a kid. Like I had a job when I was 12. I mean, I've had 2 jobs through college. It was always something I liked to work. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing something productive every day. After my hysterectomy, I didn't want to do anything. I looked at my husband differently. I thought he was like somebody who really didn't need to be there. I didn't feel good. He wasn't helping me. What's the point? I lost interest in everything. So it was really hard to go to work every day. It changed how I viewed things. I can't explain it in true words, but it was something that I'd never ever believed would happen from just a loss of hormones. But hormones really give us our motivation, our sex drive, our drive to perform work and complete jobs. There's so many things that are chemical in our brain that God put there, of course, but he uses chemicals to make us who we are. That this was something that I had a revelation about. And this was something that really changed how I viewed medicine and what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. God called me.
That's wonderful. It's so beautiful. And I understand from what you just said a moment ago that you yourself were familiar with hormones already and hormone replacement and helping women with hormones. So if you already had that understanding and that orientation and you were helping people with hormones, what was so radically different about meeting this doctor? What was he doing with hormones that was so different than what you were already doing that it made such a radical difference?
Hormones that the FDA approves for women is just oral estrogen, oral progesterone. They don't accept that testosterone is part of the hormones that women need or make when they're younger or younger than menopause. So I'd already been disappointed in that type of hormone. And I had already embraced bioidentical hormones because the truth is there were so many people in my practice that did not respond to what is approved by the FDA that I looked to compounding pharmacies to make hormones in a compounded way to help them. So I learned from a pharmacist or 2 how to do this. I'd have all these women who were aging not feel better. So I got better at replacing the hormones that were missing, like progesterone for PMS, and estrogen and testosterone for menopause. But I never made people completely better. I never made women completely better. I just made them able to get through their lives. It just made them able to live. And when I had this, nothing worked. So I just, to make myself better with all the things I knew, and I actually knew a lot more than most people because I was curious and I really wanted this. I wanted to have a cure for women prior to even having this problem, but I never found it until I got to Gino. And Gino said, if you don't put the pellets, if you don't put hormones under the skin, and if you don't allow it to dissolve slowly and give you hormones in the same way your ovary gave it to you, you're never going to feel like you did before. So he put pellets in me, estrogen and testosterone, and I started sleeping again. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't crabby. I didn't have anxiety. I was really miserable and unpleasant to live with. And I didn't want to go to work anymore until I got the testosterone back. And that's really the key hormone that I had been missing. And it wasn't given to me, or I hadn't been compounding it in a way that I could actually absorb it. But pellets do that. And they do that for me and thousands of other people that I've treated since.
Well, something about this hormone pellet is just radically more effective than traditional hormone replacement therapy, apparently. And it just sounds wonderful and awesome. And I'm going to try to ask you a few more questions about this.
Okay.
But at this point, I think maybe if I could just give a little word of testimony, and I want our listeners to understand why I wanted to talk to you, Dr. Kathy, and why I feel like this is so incredibly important. For those that follow my podcast, many of you know that I did a 5-part series on the podcast beginning in episode 43. And the title was When You or Your Spouse Doesn't Like Sex. And we know that it's not uncommon for many, if not most couples, that one person in the relationship typically is higher sexed and one person is lower sexed. And this disparity in sexual appetite can often lead to significant difficulty and hurt and confusion and pain and frustration and misunderstanding in the context of a committed relationship. And in addition, as both a pastor and a professional counselor, I've seen that this disparity in sexual appetite is often one of the greatest challenges that many couples face in their relationship. So I was trying to speak to this issue in this 5-part podcast series, When You or Your Spouse Doesn't Like Sex. And in that series, I identified what I believe are 4 very common reasons that couples often struggle with sexual disconnection in their relationship. And those 4 reasons are: number 1, their relationship with their spouse. In other words, if you have a horrible relationship, you don't get along, you're not friends, if you feel like your spouse is unkind and insensitive, you have relational issues, then of course that's going to affect who you are sexually together. You're probably going to have diminished sexual desire because you have a lousy relationship. So you need to work on the relationship itself. The second reason is because sometimes people have unfinished business, or it has to do with their relationship with sex itself. It has nothing to do with their spouse. So for example, let's say that a young lady was raped when she was 14 years old. Well, this happened before she even met her husband. She was raped, or maybe she had abortions, or maybe she was promiscuous, or maybe things happen that provoke deep pain and hurt and shame in her heart and life. And all that junk has followed her into her marriage. And therefore, she's wounded, like between her and her own sexual self. So sometimes she needs to do work around her sexual identity. The third one has to do with you and your relationship with yourself. And what I mean by that is sometimes a person just has a really bad self-image. They don't like the way they look. They feel like they're overweight. They're not attractive. They have a low self-esteem. They don't feel good about themselves. So how is a person going to feel good about sex with their spouse if they don't even feel good about who they are in their own skin and their relationship with themselves? And then the fourth reason is what I call you and your relationship with your body. And in that point, I'm trying to speak to this idea that sometimes a woman is affected, or a man, in their relationship with their body. And I mean organically, physically, your brain is misfiring, hormone levels are out of sync, or maybe a man has testosterone, low testosterone, or a woman, estrogen issues, whatever. So there's organic physical reasons that your body is not functioning properly. And therefore, you have a diminished sex drive or no sex drive. And it has to do with bringing things back into balance in your physical body. And I understand that's basically what you do through BioBalance Health. You're trying to help people get adjusted in a healthy way, kind of within their own body, the organic, physical levels of chemicals and nutrients and hormones and things like that that help them be balanced in their own body, and that this will often restore sexual desire and interest.
Yes, to take care of group number 4, people who have, in general, good relationships with their spouses, who have always had a sex life that was satisfying, or they have negotiated a sex life that was satisfying. In other words, my appetite says I want to have sex once a week. Yours says 4 times a week. We've negotiated twice a week, that kind of thing. But that was their happy negotiation throughout their life. And then something happens. And that something can be, it's usually women first. Women usually lose their testosterone between 40 and 50, and it's before menopause. And no one talks about this. So I wrote the book, The Secret Female Hormone, and that's how testosterone can change your life. For women who are in this age group or even a little older, who lose their testosterone, and then they lose their drive to have sex at all, and then they lose their relationship with their husbands, which is, sex is integral to a relationship, and it's very important, and all of a sudden it's gone. So what I usually hear from my patients, and this isn't everybody, and this isn't all we do, but most patients say, I shouldn't have an absent sex drive, but it's like not being hungry anymore. I'm not hungry. I'm done. I'm full. And I don't feel like having sex anymore. Now, I felt that too. And I know how weird that is for somebody who's always had a sex drive. So that is what we tackle. And we are doctors, and we go through all of the habits, basically sexual questions, and we go through also all the hormones. We do blood tests before we even see anybody. And then we sit down with them and try to get them their hormones back and have a healthy sex without having, you can't be unhealthy and have a healthy sex life. So we try to help people get hormones back. The only thing it's not the only thing testosterone does is get your sex life back. It brings your health back. It brings your joie de vivre back. So it also makes you feel younger and more energetic. So some people have lost their drive to go to work. Some people have lost their drive to do charity work. They just have stopped living. And that has to do with your testosterone level. It's really an amazing thing. And it was stopped me in my tracks of doing OBGYN when I felt like this was my calling to tell people this. So there weren't so many divorces. So there weren't so many families that were crushed by usually the wife saying, I'm done. I just don't want to have sex anymore. And it makes you have to have sex within the marriage or you don't have sex. So, or you should have sex in the marriage and or you don't have sex. So it was driving people outside their marriage, which isn't good, the other partner, and it was causing many problems within marriages and harming children as well. So I felt like this was part of my calling to help make people aware and help supply with testosterone so they could get their lives back.
That's very beautiful, Dr. Kathy. And it feels like, what you're saying is that sexuality is just such an integral, significant, powerful part of successful and healthy relationship. It's at the epicenter of who people are and what relationship is and what marriage is intended to be. And if that sex part gets messed up, then people lose their equilibrium. They feel hurt and confused. They feel rejected. They feel like they're failing. It leads to all kinds of dilemma and difficulty. So
that's right.
It's so significant to be healthy sexually. So if I could finish my personal testimony that I started a moment ago. So my wife and I, at the time that we're recording this, we've been married 36 years. And those that listen to my podcast, you guys have heard my story. And you know that when I talk about this, I do so with my wife's permission. We believe that God wants us to share our story with others to try to help others with all the pain and hurt and difficulty that we've been through in the context of our relationship and marriage. And that's one of the things that I love about God is I don't think he wants us to waste our pain. A lot of times the things that we go through can accrue to the benefit of others if we're willing to share our story. Well, you guys know that my marriage, the early years of my marriage were a total disaster. And at the epicenter of the disaster for us is very much what Dr. Kathy is talking about. The epicenter of the crisis for us had to do with sex. And although I didn't understand it at the time, I later came to understand as I got into my therapeutic process that I was a deeply broken man. I had a sexual addiction. My wife had a sexual aversion. She never, ever wanted to have sex when we got married. I didn't know how to deal with that. I felt hurt. I felt rejected. I felt confused. And I hadn't dealt with my own addiction yet. So I began to act out. And it was an absolute mess. And so my wife and I eventually ended up in a therapeutic process. We went to counseling for 6 years. And God helped us to understand our story, understand a lot of hurt, understand a lot of things that happened to us and things that we had done wrong. And we were experiencing health and progress and wholeness in our relationship and in our marriage. But the fact remains that my wife still had a very diminished sexual appetite, and it continued to be a struggle. And that is until we found Dr. Kathy Maupin. And when my wife started seeing Dr. Maupin and Dr. Kathy treated my wife with this BioBalance Health and this hormone pellet therapy, I'm telling you, it is absolutely unbelievable how it affected my wife. And how it affected, as Dr. Kathy is saying, not just her sexual interest and sex drive, but her level of energy, her enthusiasm about life, her motivation, her ability to be less tired, to get up early in the morning, to accomplish more things, her general attitude. I mean, it was like, holy cow, what did this woman, Dr. Kathy, do to my wife? I'm telling you guys, it was unbelievable. Like, I sent one woman to Dr. Kathy, and Dr. Kathy sent me a different woman back home. So, Dr. Kathy, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm not kidding you guys. The first time that I met Dr. Kathy, I knew this was going to be weird. But I said to her, Dr. Kathy, if this wasn't too weird, I am telling you, I am not kidding you. If it wasn't too weird, and if you would allow me, I will bow down. I will kiss your feet. I will kiss your feet because of what you did to my life and how you helped my marriage. It's unbelievable.
But Tony, I didn't do that. You know that. Every time you're called, conduit. You're a conduit to what God wanted us to know about ourselves, or a conduit to his information that we should have figured out, we should have known. I don't know why we haven't figured this out, but he can use one person to just like he uses you to heal marriages. He used me to bring this information to thousands of people. And this is how this works. You and I both know how that works. So oftentimes I'm patient and I don't even know what I said later because it was really him.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I think it's beautiful. I appreciate your humility. But I'll just say thank you for following this calling from God as you learned about this and you embraced a vision and you realized the desperate need that so many people need this kind of help and therapy. And you followed your heart and you followed what you thought God was leading you to do. And as a result, your practice went in this different direction and you have helped so many people and you are helping so many people and you've helped my life personally. So I just really appreciate who you are and what you've done. And I can't thank you enough.
Well, I am humbled, and I so thank you telling people about what we do. I even have my daughter working with me, and she, how young adults usually don't believe what their parents do is the proper thing, but she's my partner. So we do this together.
That's wonderful.
She watches this every day. She goes, "Hey, these people came in and they were upset about their relationship at this point because it was fine until one of them lost their testosterone, and it will be fine again. And then when they come back, said, see those guys? That's the couple I was telling you about. Now they're just so happy and everything is working as it should." So I guess this is part of what disease is. It's the sinful, it's the sin of the world, basically. And it causes us to not function normally. And so just getting people back to normal is really an amazing thing.
That's wonderful. So I'd like to talk a little bit about your two books. You've written two books, one for women and one for men. The one for women first, it's called The Secret Female Hormone.
Yes.
Let me read this little vignette about the book, okay? Then we'll talk about it. Dr. Kathy Maupin wants her readers to see her as a friend who wants them to have a full, healthy, and wonderful life. She wants to empower women to use all the experience they gain in their first 40 years to continue living in a positive and passionate way. This book will inject women with a righteous anger that they can use to change their lives. It will encourage and inform women so they can complain confidently to their doctors who are practicing safe medicine that only treats men well and ignores the plight of hormone loss in women, and tell them that they are mad as hell and aren't going to take this treatment anymore. The goal of this book is not only to change the lives of women over 40, but to actually change how medicine manages women who are aging and losing their hormones. So, the title of the book is The Secret Female Hormone, and the answer is testosterone, right? That is the secret female hormone. So can you talk about, we think of testosterone as more for men. Men need testosterone. But you're saying that testosterone is absolutely critical and necessary for women. It is the secret female hormone that almost nobody talks about, or the medical community isn't recognizing the significance of testosterone in the body of a woman. So can you just talk about why is testosterone so important for a female?
Okay, so the hormone testosterone is made in a woman's ovaries, and it peaks in women who are cycling. It peaks every month right before ovulation, so it motivates women to have sex so that they can procreate. but they have testosterone throughout the month. And humans were not meant just to have sex at ovulation. So we have testosterone all the time, but it is the highest right before ovulation. The men have testosterone their whole lives. It doesn't stop at any time. When we talk about male menopause, it just means males decrease their testosterone usually after the age of 55, and it becomes below what they need. But women actually stop making it because their ovaries, menopause, becoming symptomatic with losing their sex drive, losing their bodies. Their bodies get fat, they lose muscle. I mean, I did as well. I don't mean they, I mean we. We get belly fat, we are exhausted, a lot of other hormones then kind of act like dominoes. Thyroids drop, estrogen goes up, we lose our progesterone, so we get PMS. And then we finally end up with menopause and absolutely no hormones. So that's the natural history of a woman's hormones. Now, when I was in training to be an OBGYN, we had 4 years of 90 hours a week of training. I had 4 hours of training in hormones after menopause. That's it, 4 hours. And all they said was, you give people Prempro and that's it, you're done. Because the interest of the American College of OBGYN for all the OBGYNs in the country is people to deliver babies, take their uteruses out, do surgery, and then we aren't interested in their hormones. We're not interested in anything that actually helps them as they get older. That's not their interest, which is a sin to write women off after 50. They have basically said women do not need testosterone. It's not one of their hormones, when in fact, research has shown that women make 3 times as much testosterone from their ovaries as they do estradiol, the young women's estrogen. So we make more testosterone than estradiol, yet it's not a female hormone. So that's the big secret. And that's one of the things that they don't acknowledge. If we talk about the symptoms of low testosterone, they call that premenopausal symptoms. And so there's a history. Medicine's always been run by guys until the last 25 years. And it's still run by guys, but there's more of us women there to actually ask questions. And the symptoms of low progesterone, which is PMS, low testosterone, which is lack of libido and all the other things we've talked about, and low estrogen, into a psychiatric disease. So now they've told us we're crazy because we have PMS. And honestly, on my boards in 1999, the question was, is PMS a psychiatric disease? And the right answer for the American College of OBGYN was yes. When really PMS is just 2 weeks of not having enough progesterone. And it goes away if you take natural progesterone. So I was doing that in 1986. So, and we have to take tests. Now we take them yearly, but then we took them every 10 years. So there is a movement in the United States to write off women after they are beyond childbearing, and men are fine, of course. And then I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but when women are given birth control pills to control their fertility, which is, we're the child bearers, which is great because we're the moms and we love it. But that takes energy, time, and money out of society, because that's our job. We shouldn't have to do 2 jobs at once. But having said that, I did 2 jobs at once. Having said that, we are all treated like we're crazy when we don't have our hormones, and we're also treated like second-class citizens. So we have no testosterone, and they give us psychiatric pills like antidepressants for all of these other illnesses that are really hormonal, and the pill actually shuts down our testosterone, so we have no sex drive when on the pill. Now, that's not everybody, but that's most people. That's a majority of women. I think that people should know that, and know that when they're on the pill, they won't have a sex drive. So it works 2 ways. It keeps you from ovulating, and it keeps you from making testosterone, so you don't want to have sex, and that wrecks marriages. So these are just a few of the things that the powers that be have done in the treatment of women that have not been for our benefit. They've been for the benefit of society or for the benefit of men, but not for us.
Wow. So powerful. So many things that you're saying. I'm very intrigued. And I didn't know what you just said, that when a woman is on the pill, it diminishes her sex drive.
Or knocks it out completely. I mean, many women don't have sex through the motions because they're trying to keep their husbands happy.
Yeah. And how sad is that? Because what I would commonly refer to as duty sex,
right?
That's not good for the marriage. It's not satisfying to the husband. It's not good for the wife. It's not satisfying to her. It's just a miserable situation all around.
I think the only people it's good for is stand-up comedians. That, you know, that's what they make fun of us that way. But it's really, it's a tragedy for women. It's not just American women. It's all over the globe. Interestingly enough, most of the other countries follow us, which is dangerous and a nightmare. But we need to actually have people that march on Washington for women's rights. I mean, this is one of the things that we really have lost or never had. So we have to change medicine to do that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted people to read the book, to show what we aren't given or how we're not treated properly or equally. We really need to get our testosterone. We really need to have our whatever form of birth control we use not kill our sex drive.
Hey guys, I hate to do it, but I see from the clock that we're out of time for this episode of the Power of Purity podcast, so I need to jump in and interrupt right here. I trust that you have been blessed by this fascinating discussion with Dr. Kathy, and I encourage you and invite you to come back next week where we will continue with part 2 of this interview with Dr. Kathy Maupin and BioBalance Health. I'll look forward to seeing you guys then. Until then, be blessed, have an awesome week, have an awesome day, and we'll see you right back here next week. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.